You're not lost because the world is confusing. You're lost because you've betrayed your own potential. And deep down, you know it. Let that sink in. We live in a time where distraction is glorified, comfort is sold as purpose, and avoidance is mistaken for self-care. But if you wake up each morning and feel like you're drifting, no anchor, no direction, then you're not broken. You're simply unaligned, and the good news, you can fix that. But it won't be easy. It will demand brutal honesty, uncomfortable responsibility, and courageous clarity. Here are 4 hard truths that will lead you out of the fog. Chaos isn't something to avoid, it's something to confront. You're lost because you've allowed disorder to multiply around you physically, mentally, emotionally. Look around your room, your habits, and your thoughts. If they're in disarray, of course your identity feels fractured. The first step out of feeling lost is to face the dragons guarding your potential. Clean your environment, fix your routines, eliminate the garbage you've normalized. Small order in one domain of life ripples into others. When you choose to face what's chaotic, you reclaim authorship of your life. Feeling lost often stems from living in self-deception. You pretend the job is fine, the relationship is okay, the addictions are just a phase. But deep down, you know what you're compromising. When you speak lies, especially to yourself, you start constructing a false map of reality. Then you wonder why you can't navigate it. The antidote is radical honesty. Start telling the truth, even when it's painful, especially when it's embarrassing. Truth is the compass that points north. Without it, every step leads you further into the wilderness. One of the most powerful ways to stop feeling lost is to take responsibility for something meaningful. Not a burden forced on you, but a task you choose. Start with something small, your health, your morning routine, a family duty. Take full ownership. When you do that, the fog begins to clear. Why? Because responsibility ties you to purpose. It gives you weight, and when you bear a meaningful burden voluntarily, you become someone worth being. That's how identity is forged, not by seeking happiness, but by enduring responsibility with courage. People feel lost because they aim at nothing. They drift from one dopamine hit to another, endlessly scrolling, numbing, and reacting. You want to stop feeling lost, then set a clear aim, even if it's imperfect. Want to be strong, start lifting. Want to write, start with 1 paragraph a day. Want to build something meaningful, begin where you are with what you have. Your aim gives structure to your suffering. It turns random motion into direction. You'll stumble, you'll fail, but without aiming, you're not even in the game. You're just an observer of your own decay. No one is coming to rescue you, but that's the best news possible, because once you realize that you are the rescuer, everything changes. Chaos is not your enemy, it's your origin. Every great transformation, every meaningful life, begins with an encounter with chaos. When you feel lost in life, it's often because you've let that chaos swell unchecked, and now you're drowning in it. It starts small. Maybe your room is a mess, your desk is buried under weeks of clutter, your schedule is a web of randomness. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, but it does. Your external environment reflects your internal state, and the more you ignore the chaos around you, the more it takes over within you. The piles on the floor become the confusion in your head. The unfinished tasks become a weight on your chest. Slowly, silently, chaos wraps itself around your identity until you don't recognize who you are anymore. But here's the hard truth. Order will never emerge on its own. You must impose it, and not with resentment, but with intention. This is where people get stuck. They wait for motivation. They want clarity to come first, but that's not how the game works. Clarity comes after you take action. You clean your room not because it changes the world, but because it changes you. You confront the pile of laundry, the unopened emails, the uncomfortable conversation, not because these are monumental tasks, but because they are your first battles. You voluntarily face what you've been avoiding, and in doing so, you shift the balance within yourself. When you start bringing order to the smallest domains of your life, you're actually engaging in something cosmic. You're learning to tame chaos. You're saying, "This is mine. I will take responsibility for it. I will bring structure where there was none." And this act, repeated daily, reconfigures your self-image. You begin to believe you are capable, not because you fantasize about it, but because you have evidence. Your environment begins to reflect discipline. Your mind begins to reflect clarity, and slowly the fog begins to lift. Don't underestimate the power of these small victories. Don't mock the value of making your bed or organizing your time. These are the foundations of psychological order. When you are lost, you must return to what you can control. You must voluntarily walk into the mess and emerge with something in your hands. An accomplishment, a system, a habit. It's not dramatic, it's not glamorous, but it is the beginning of transformation. Because the person who faces chaos willingly is the person who is no longer lost, but on the path to mastery. One of the most destructive forces that keeps people lost is not the external world. It's the lies they tell themselves. These aren't always blatant, dramatic lies. Sometimes they're quiet compromises, whispered rationalizations, or subtle acts of self-deception. You tell yourself you're okay when you're not. You pretend that you're fulfilled in a job that drains your soul. You fake enthusiasm in relationships that feel hollow. And over time, the distance between who you truly are and who you're pretending to be becomes a chasm so wide that you can't even see the other side anymore. That's what it means to be lost, not just uncertain of where you're going, but unsure of who's walking the path in the first place. The human psyche cannot thrive on a foundation of falsehood. Every lie you live by erodes your internal structure. Your identity begins to fragment, your decisions become misaligned, and you start operating with a warped map of reality. Then, when life pushes back, as it inevitably does, you don't know why, you feel like a victim when in fact you've sabotaged yourself. You can't navigate a world you've refused to see clearly. Truth isn't just a moral virtue, it's a navigational tool. Without it, you're not living. You're improvising a life that was never truly yours to begin with. Radical honesty is not about being brutally blunt with others. It's about finally being brutally precise with yourself. It means confronting the parts of your life that you've been avoiding, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. It means admitting what isn't working, even if changing it terrifies you. It means asking hard questions and refusing to settle for easy answers. What are you afraid to admit? What are you pretending not to know? Who are you blaming for a life you're responsible for? Until you stare those answers in the face, you will stay lost, not because the world is unclear, but because you refuse to see it clearly. The act of telling the truth, especially to yourself, is an act of war against the parts of you that want to stay asleep. It demands courage. It may cost you relationships, jobs, or illusions you've clung to for years. But what you gain in return is something priceless: clarity, integrity, direction. When you start living in truth, your decisions become sharper, your path becomes visible, and most importantly, your sense of self begins to solidify. You're no longer drifting, you're walking with purpose, and that begins not with a miracle, but with a moment of unfiltered honesty. Responsibility is often treated like a burden to avoid. That's the lie we've been sold, that the ideal life is one of endless freedom, zero obligation, and maximum comfort. But if you're lost in life, if you're directionless and hollow, it's not because you have too much responsibility. It's because you don't have enough of the right kind. A person who has no weight to carry, no meaningful task to pursue, no one depending on them in a real way, becomes aimless. Purpose doesn't fall from the sky. It emerges when you take hold of something difficult and say, "This is mine." The paradox is this: the more voluntary responsibility you assume, the more powerful and grounded you become. It starts small. Maybe you commit to waking up at the same time every day. Maybe you decide to take care of your aging parent. Maybe you commit to showing up fully at your job, not because it's perfect, but because you said you would. These aren't grand gestures, they're signals to your psyche. They tell your nervous system, "I'm here and I matter." When you carry a load that is genuinely meaningful to you, Even if no one applauds you for it, it anchors your identity. It becomes the foundation on which you rebuild your self-respect. Here's the truth most people avoid. When you refuse responsibility, you don't escape suffering. You just trade meaningful suffering for meaningless anxiety. You suffer either way. One kind of suffering shapes you, the other crushes you, so pick up the weight. Pick up a task that scares you just enough to challenge you. Don't wait until you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. But once you accept responsibility for one area of your life, something inside you shifts. You begin to trust yourself, and that's what truly pulls people out of confusion. Not motivation or external validation, but a quiet, growing sense of competence born through effort. You are not meant to be a passive observer in your own life. You are designed to build, to carry, to contribute. The world doesn't need more spectators. It needs individuals willing to stand up straight and take ownership of something real. And when you do that, even on a small scale, you begin to walk a path that is no longer determined by fear or confusion. You may still feel uncertain at times, but you won't be lost. You'll be moving forward, guided by responsibility, driven by the meaning it creates. That's how the fog begins to lift, not all at once, but with every step taken under the weight of something worthwhile. When people say they feel lost, what they often mean is that they're living without direction. But you cannot have direction without a target, and you cannot hit a target you haven't even identified. This is the trap. People want clarity before they move, but clarity comes after you aim. It comes after you take that first imperfect step. Most people are paralyzed by the fear of choosing the wrong path, so they choose nothing at all. They distract themselves with short-term pleasures, indulge in meaningless distractions, and tell themselves they're figuring it out. But you can't figure anything out if you refuse to move. Movement is clarity. Stillness, when it's driven by fear, only breeds more confusion. Aim at something, anything. Choose a path that's just slightly better than the one you're on right now. You don't need to have it all figured out. In fact, you won't. That's not how life works. But by choosing a goal, even a small one, you begin to construct meaning out of the chaos. You give structure to your time, discipline to your actions, and value to your suffering. If you aim at becoming a better version of yourself, you start behaving differently today. You stop living on autopilot. You start moving towards something, and that movement changes who you are. You'll make mistakes. You'll fall short, and that's okay. Your initial aim doesn't have to be perfect. It only needs to be real, something you can act on today. That's how refinement happens, not through overthinking, but through adjustment. You aim, you move, you stumble, you recalibrate. Every mistake becomes feedback. Every step forward adds clarity. You evolve not by staying in place analyzing all your options, but by choosing one and walking it with your eyes wide open. Life is not a straight line. It's a series of informed corrections, but none of that is possible if you refuse to aim. Don't underestimate the power of a clear direction. It doesn't eliminate pain, but it gives your pain purpose. It doesn't make life easy, but it makes it meaningful. When you live with no aim, your suffering feels pointless. When you live with a target in sight, even failure becomes part of your growth. So stop waiting for the perfect dream to land in your lap. Pick something worthwhile and pursue it with all your energy. You will either get what you aimed for, or you'll become someone strong enough to aim higher. Either way, you're no longer lost. You're becoming. When you feel lost in life, it's tempting to believe that the problem lies outside of you, in your circumstances, your past, or the unfairness of the world. But the truth is far more personal and far more powerful. You are lost because you have not yet claimed the responsibility of shaping your own path, and while that may sound harsh, it is the greatest news you could ever receive, because it means you have the power to change. The moment you stop waiting for clarity to arrive and start building it from within, you begin the transformation from passive wanderer to intentional creator. The fog doesn't lift all at once, but each brave step forward carves a path through it. The chaos in your life, both around you and within you, is not something to run from. It is the raw material of your rebirth. When you confront the disarray, your messy room, your inconsistent habits, your spiraling thoughts, you are not just cleaning or organizing, you are reclaiming your identity. You are telling yourself, I matter, my choices matter. That simple act of voluntary confrontation has a compounding effect. What begins with sweeping the floor or structuring your day becomes the foundation for self-respect. You stop waiting for life to sort itself out and begin asserting your own order, no matter how small it starts, and the lies you tell yourself, the comforting delusions, the false excuses, must be burned away if you ever hope to see clearly. Honesty, raw and difficult as it is, becomes your internal compass. Every time you admit what's broken, what's missing, what you've avoided, you gain power over it. That doesn't mean life becomes instantly easier. In fact, it often becomes harder at first. But that difficulty is where your character is forged. Radical honesty doesn't just heal confusion, it builds identity. And when combined with real responsibility, when you carry something that truly matters, you begin to feel grounded. Rooted, capable of bearing weight, capable of becoming more. Finally, you must aim, not perfectly, not fearlessly, just deliberately. When you commit to a direction, even if it's uncertain, you give your life shape. You give your suffering meaning, and that is what rescues you from being lost. Not the illusion of having it all figured out, but the courage to move anyway. Life is not about standing still until you're certain. It's about walking forward with purpose, adjusting, failing, learning, and evolving. You don't need to have all the answers right now, but you must begin, you must act, because the person you are becoming is waiting on the other side of your first real step. And that journey, the one you take with your eyes open, your back straight, and your heart engaged, is how you actually stop feeling lost in life. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, reflect, and walk through this message with me. If this speech sparked even a small shift in how you see yourself, then it's already served its purpose. Remember, feeling lost isn't a life sentence, it's a signal, a call to realign, to rebuild, and to reclaim the life you were meant to live. You have more strength, more clarity, and more potential than you've allowed yourself to believe. Don't let it go to waste. If this resonated with you, share it with someone else who might need to hear it today. Sometimes, all it takes is one message at the right time to change a life. I appreciate your support, your presence, and your willingness to grow. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until then, take responsibility for your path, aim with purpose, and walk boldly into the life you are meant to lead. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself, keep moving forward, and goodbye for now.